That. And joining us now, CNN senior military analyst, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis. He's also a partner at the Carlyle Group, a global investment firm, and author of the Admiral's Bookshelf. Admiral, thank you so much for being here with us. I want you to help us contextualize some of this information that we're getting from Elena and Nick. Two pieces of this, which is that we know now that several of these B-2 bombers have left the U.S. We know that the defense officials have cautioned this doesn't mean a strike is imminent, but that it's just about preparation. And then that information that Nick was giving us about what Israel is now doing in Iran, where they're striking, further east, further south. Taken all together, what do you read into those developments?
I think the most important one is one you mentioned a moment ago, which is that President Trump is walking away from his golf weekend to come back to the White House. That's very significant. He's not coming back to the White House to discuss how can we get to a ceasefire. I think he's coming back to look at all the intelligence again, and he must be getting closer and closer to a decision to go. Now, I add to that, Jessica, what you just mentioned, the movement of these B-2 bombers. Moving them to Guam is interesting. It's kind of less provocative, if you will, than taking them all the way to the Indian Ocean, to the island of Diego Garcia. I think that's where they'll end up if we decide to strike. So think of moving them to Guam as taking the car out of the garage, giving it a final tune-up, giving it a quick road test, getting it closer to Diego Garcia, or at least a bit closer, getting those crews out of home port. They're not going to be home on Saturday night. They're deployed forward. I think that's quite significant. And then third and finally, as you mentioned, the strikes on Bandar Abbas. I applaud that. I think it's smart thinking on the part of the Israelis. And in addition to prepping the air and the path for those B-2s, it also sends a big signal to Iran. Don't even think about trying to close the Strait of Hormuz if the United States strikes. So these are big movements. We're going to have to see what comes out of the meeting in the Situation Room.
And Admiral, look, it's anybody's guess exactly what's going through the president's mind. Obviously, he's having this meeting in the Situation Room. But as he's processing all of this information, what is he looking for? What are they giving him? What new information is he getting? What might that be like?
First and foremost, he's getting an update on all of the options that he talked to his team about a few days ago when they had what was apparently a very significant meeting right around the time he announced the 2-week potential pause, or at least the period of time in which he'll make a decision. So he's reviewing the options. Okay, I said to move carriers forward. Are they in place? Check. I said to move tankers forward. Are 24 tankers now in the Middle East that provide the fuel? Check. Are the B-2s out of their hangars in Missouri and forward into an operational posture? Reporting says check. So he's looking at all of his forces. Where are they? Number two, he's reviewing the intelligence, both from the Israelis, how their strikes are going, and also any further intelligence provided by the U.S. intelligence community on what's Iran doing? What are they thinking? Where are they moving forces? Are they exercising their F-14s you talked about a moment ago, which the Israelis hopefully took out on the ground? So he's reviewing intelligence. And then third and finally, he's listening to recommendations. He's probably going to pay a lot of attention to what his cabinet members, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, and others say to him. What do they think? And knowing President Trump as we do, probably not in the Situation Room, but either before or after, he's also calling a circle of other advisors, say somebody like Senator Lindsey Graham or Senator Tom Cotton, both very strong actors and influences on him in this zone of defense. So he's got a busy Saturday night ahead of him. That's why he's the president of the United States.
Yeah, and what in these conversations, are there conversations about, okay, if you do proceed with the strike, what happens the day after that? What happens? How does this unfold? What are the scenarios look like after that happens?
Absolutely. And here, part of the options he would have put in play are missile defense systems for all of our U.S. troops in the area. Are they in place, tuned up, ready to go? Looks like check. Are we moving our guided missile destroyers and cruisers who have significant area air defense into position to defend these 40,000 U.S. troops that are all around the Middle East? Appears to my eye, check. Are we cyber ready for anything the Iranian cyber forces could attempt to do against U.S. forces, U.S. businesses in the area? And then finally, are our embassies on high state of alert? Are their individual security plans activated? Are they talking to all U.S. Citizens in their individual countries? Because frankly, the Iranians may not go after hardened military American targets. They could go after American business people, expats who are working in these countries. They get their warning, their theory of protection from our embassies. So on that defensive side, I am certain that part of this cabinet meeting will be to discuss readiness for an Iranian response if we launch a strike on their nuclear facilities.
Do you believe at this point that it is possible for the U.S. to move forward with a strike without being drawn into a regional war?
I think it's possible, but increasingly less likely because of what we just talked about. Let's say hypothetically over the next 2-3 days, we launch a strike, we're successful, we take out Fordow, all of those centrifuges are destroyed, but the Iranians decide to lash out. They shoot down American businessmen in Dubai. They launch a ballistic missile that somehow gets through and hits our base in Qatar, at Doha. They have a drone that strikes an American destroyer and kills 100 sailors. If that occurs, and I think they'll try it, then the White House will probably respond to that. It will escalate. There'll be more response both from us and from Israel, and you're into that regional war. If we cannot find a path to diplomacy and we do take this strike, we simply have to recognize that the odds are the Iranians will respond, and that potentially could draw us into that wider war that nobody wants.
You mentioned diplomacy. Of course, that's what, at the moment, the president has been trying to give time for, saying, this comment about giving it 2 weeks, that he's trying to get a deal done. Do you think all of these moves that we've just walked through with such detail, do you think that those can ultimately be a last nudge to get Iran to the negotiating table, or are we past that point?
They very much can have a dual purpose. Moving all those forces into the theater sends a pretty crystal clear message to Iran that we're prepared to act here, quite literally. And then secondly, it also puts those forces into the operational path to conduct that strike. So if the Iranians view it as a crystal clear signal that we're prepared to strike, now the ball's in their court. And I hope they take it seriously, because my sense of this is the White House is quite serious about conducting this strike if the Iranians do not come to the table and accept the conditions that have been laid out. I think there's still a path to diplomacy. If you wanted me to put a number on it, I'd say there's still a 1 in 4 chance of a diplomatic solution here, call it 25%. Unfortunately, I think at this minute, it looks 75% like we're headed toward a strike, and therefore further moves in the vertical ladder of escalation, potentially regional war.
All right. Well, we will see. Admiral James Stavridis, we always appreciate your analysis on all of this. Thanks so much.